Hello, everyone. Welcome to Out of Spec Guide. I'm Max. Today I'm joined by Dave Connor. Hello.
Max, how's it going? Are you ready to lose a debate? I'm just curious because I just want to set the stage properly here.
Yeah, well, I don't think I'm going to lose today, but to introduce what we're talking about, this is a series where we're going to compare the best cars that you can get against each other. And in this episode, we've got two great choices, Hyundai Ioniq 5 and Tesla Model Y. So, Dave, I thought Hyundai Ioniq 5, you actually own one of those, and your
Yes.
wife has a GV60, which is the Genesis, the luxury version of that same car. So I thought it'd be great for you to represent that car, and I'm going to represent the Tesla crossover in this
Sound,
situation.
sounds good. Sounds good. Um, yeah, look, I don't even think this is worthy of debating. The Ionic 5 is such a superior car in so many different ways. Let me, I'm not sure how you want to do this format, but I'm just going to come out swinging if that's okay.
Sure,
Uh,
give me your first bullet point. What's the
Look, I
big
think
pro in favor of it?
so. There are three things that come to mind. First, the Ionic 5 is a charging animal. Okay. Now, we're not going to talk about charging infrastructure here. Let's assume that you can find a 350 and
Yeah.
it works fine, and you compare that to a working Tesla charger. This car charges extremely fast, deep into the pack. We're talking consistently, I've replicated 20 to 80% in 18 minutes or even less sometimes. That's number one. So I think it charges better than the Tesla. Number two, safety features. Um, this is a car that has many more safety features than the Tesla. And I'll give you just a couple as an example. You're driving down the road, you have a blind spot. In this car, you're going to have a light that will light up by your left hand mirror if you're looking on the left hand side. You will have um, you'll have rear cross traffic alert, not just alert, but the car will actually it'll stop, it'll slam on the brakes if you're pulling out of a parking lot, spot. It'll prevent an accident. And I've actually had it happen two or three times where I was like slammed on the brakes. Why did it do that? It scared me, but I realized it was a safety feature. And then if you've got HDA2, which is available on the limited trim, I
And
believe
that's highway driving assist, right?
the high, yeah. So I always got Hyundai driver assist, but it's actually highway driver assist because it is available across all the Kia Genesis platform cars. But the HDA2 includes radar sensors in the front for front traffic collision avoidance as well. And then on the limited trim on this car, you get some really what I believe to be even more safety features. That being heads up display, and then a novelty, which is cooled seats as well. So I'll just come out of the gates swinging a little hard at you, Max.
Okay, so you came at me with two really good points to start with, right? That beastly charging capability, just great safety features and creature comforts. I'll give you those. The Ioniq 5 does those well. I have to mention, you didn't even say this, Dave. I think the car looks great. If I can just show
Well,
my,
yeah, I mean, look, it is a spaceship,
yeah.
this is the you got to have the traveling companion with it's a wild looking car. It's not for everybody though, and
Yeah.
that's what I like. The EGMP platform itself, what Hyundai Kia Genesis is doing is say, if you don't like the Ioniq 5, go for the EV6. You don't like the EV6, go for the GV60. You don't like any of those? Well, then whatever. Get an ID4 or a Model Y. But
Or the Model Y. And so I gave you those points for style, just as a courtesy, as a good debater, because I know that Model Y has so much else going for it. Starting with, let's talk charging here, because while sure on paper the Ioniq 5 can charge really quickly, it's got that really fancy high voltage battery architecture. The Tesla in the real world, the Model Y, charges really well. I believe it in excess of 200 kilowatts on basically every Model Y you can order, meaning you're still going to get those 20 to 30-minute charging stops. And guess what? Most of those will probably actually work because they're on Tesla's excellent supercharger network. And did I mention, these are both crossovers we're talking about, but oh my gosh, is the Model Y functional? This thing has oodles of storage space. I don't know about your Ioniq 5, but I think Model Y is such a practical car.
well,
And
yeah, I'll give you that. The Ioniq 5 does not. It has. I don't even call it a frunk. It's got sort of a thimble, but I. Keep going. Keep going.
Yeah, but it has a real front trunk. But also, let's talk about safety since you brought that up. So, yes, I do agree. The Hyundai Safety Suite HDA2, those are good systems for kind of basically radar cruise, safety, front avoidance, collision avoidance. But the Tesla has autopilot, and you can expand that to full autopilot and even full self driving. Now, Tesla calls it full self driving. Is it full self driving? No. But I think it has a really good camera based system for safety, adaptive cruise, all of these creature
Yeah.
comforts.
I tell you what, I think it's damn right dangerous. Okay, I think FSD is dangerous. Enhanced, I'll give you that, but I will also throw back at you that HDA two
Yeah.
includes out of the box lane changes, as opposed to paying $6,000 for enhanced autopilot, and HDA one, which is only available for currently on the GV60 because they ran out of radar parts, I guess, due to part shortage. I don't really understand that. But what happens with HDA1 is that when you change lanes and you put on your turn signal, which is the more basic of the two systems that Hyundai offers, then what will happen is the car you'll take you'll take the lane manually, but as soon as you get over into the next lane, it will automatically pick up and it will reconnect the auto steering. Whereas in the Tesla, if you don't pay $6,000 for enhanced, you gotta click twice down on the stock again in order to re-engage the auto steering. I want to go back to one point you made, which is on charging. And I will say that the Tesla supercharging network, I'm not going to debate that it's not as good a network as the EA or the EVgo or any of these other networks, because it's not. However, what I would say is because this car is an 800-volt system on a 150, you see, when you pull into EAs, most of the chargers that are there are 150s. They're not 350s. So you're like, okay, well, I only have a 150. You pull into a V2 on a Tesla, and if somebody's sharing that cabinet, you know what you're pulling, Max? You're getting 75 kilowatts. You know what I'm pulling with an 800-volt system on an EA station at a 150? I'm pulling 170. Okay,
If you got it
so
to activate in the first place, yes. Um,
true.
that's true. Yeah.
That's true. So, look, I think that when you can find a reliable CCS station, the car will charge a lot better. And while the Model Y will charge deep into the pack, 250 on a V3, it doesn't go like much past. I think my testing was like in the low 30s. It starts to taper, and it tapers hard. Whereas the Ioniq 5s and the EGMP platforms really they go deeper into the pack at much higher states of charge.
So what we're talking about there is basically right. The Tesla charges really quickly off the gate and starts to slow down. The Hyundai does actually keep a pretty high rate of charge deep into the battery state of charge, which is
Right.
I'll give you that pretty sweet. However, here's another thing that I think the Tesla gets right. It's a crossover, right? People want this power, they want confidence. You can't even get a rear wheel drive Model Y because Tesla gives you the option of long range or performance if you want a nice one. And yes, it costs a little bit more, but I like that Model Y is standard all wheel drive. You can order an Ioniq 5 with rear wheel drive. And in my opinion, at that point, why is it an SUV? It might as well be like a hatchback.
Well, look, I think I have never thought of the Ioniq 5 as an SUV. I've thought it has a very long wheelbase, and with the exception of the 2023 Model Ys, where they've softened up the suspension, the ride is so much better than the Model Ys. Every Model Y I've ever driven, including the one that I rented from Hertz, let's say you're doing 65 miles an hour on 95 and you're coming around a bend and there's that chatter in the road, that thing skips across to the point where it's actually, I think, excuse me, a little bit dangerous. Whereas the ride in the Ioniq 5 is far superior. The noise level far superior, meaning lower in the Ioniq 5. And I think those are some factors that you need to consider against the Model Y.
Okay, I'll give you that. You've got that in terms of the ride comfort. But guess what? What matters even more than your ride comfort? How many riders you can have with you? Model Y gives you the option of having 7 passengers because it's got such a
Okay,
cavernous
okay.
rear area.
Or 5 people and 2 gerbils, right? I mean, we're not talking about. I mean, you're gonna stick your kids in the way back? That's a joke. I do not consider that a 7-passenger car. I'm sorry.
Your opinion, but I will note, even those third row passengers in Model Y get USB-C charging for their devices. So that's just a really cool creature comfort, something
Okay,
Ioniq 5 does not even offer that
right.
I want to mention. Another thing, let's talk about this, Dave, buying experience, right? You get a Model Y from Tesla, it's the price that they say on the website. You get your order. You get your reservation in through Apple Pay on your phone while you're at a party. The Ioniq 5, you've got to deal with Hyundai dealers.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I
I'll
don't
tell you
really
what,
like
right
that.
out of the gates, you win. On that point, you win. I've had, although I had an extremely good experience with the Hyundai dealer that I ended up buying my car from, I had an extremely poor experience dealing with a Hyundai dealer that I did not buy a car from. That was a rear wheel drive that I drove, which, by the way, the difference in power between the rear wheel drive and the all wheel drive is not anywhere near as drastic. I know we're not talking about the ID4, but the ID4 rear wheel drive, by the way, best turning radius of any car other than the Mini I've ever driven. But it's a heck of a lot slower, the rear wheel drive from the ID4 than it is in the all wheel drive ID4. That rear wheel drive in the Ioniq 5, that thing zips along. It's got plenty of power. So, but I think the buying experience, Tesla's got it down. You win on that point. I'll give you that one. I'll give you 2x on that one.
Okay, well, thank you for conceding there. One more thing I want to introduce. Okay, your car has that central big touchscreen, 2 screens. Model Y only needs 1 screen, that big 15-inch interior screen, because it's a really good one. And the Tesla app is like the best automaker app I've had the pleasure of using. I
Yeah.
loved it.
How do you like integration of Apple CarPlay in your Tesla when you want to use Waze integrated into your big screen there? Because guess what? You can't do it, right? And then when you sit there and you're driving on a road trip, some people will say, "Oh, but the Ioniq 5 doesn't have wireless charging, wireless CarPlay." Well, here's the honest truth: if you have wireless charging in your car and you put your phone on there, those tend to overheat, and so what, and I find that in whether it's a Model Y or an Ioniq 5. So I'm plugging my phone into the Ioniq 5 anyway. But Apple CarPlay is just awesome. It's just amazing. So you can watch your Netflix at the supercharger. You can watch, you can play your little video games and all that. But when I'm driving my car, I got Waze integrated right into my screen.
I'll give you that, Dave. It's very
Thank
handy. However, when you're using Waze on your Apple CarPlay with your phone plugged in like a Luddite, you're not going to be preconditioning your car. When I use the Tesla navigation on their screen, it's going to precondition my battery. So on a cold winter's day, I'm actually going to realize, hopefully close to the ideal charging speed. Whereas you, Dave, would have to use the built-in Hyundai navigation system and enable their preconditioning in their menu, which, as Kyle has talked about on Out of Spec Reviews, just seems a little bit, I think, overcomplicated.
Yeah, no, listen, it's true, and unless you've got the new software update on the 22 Ioniq 5, you're not even going to have battery preconditioning on the car, and so the 2023s have it. The 2023 GV60 has it as well, but it's when I use Waze in an Ioniq 5, if I want to precondition, I have to actually also put the destination into the car's navigation system. You're correct, which is no different than me using Waze in a Model Y or a Model 3. There's not that integration for battery preconditioning. One question I have, Max, I'm not sure if you know this, but on the Ioniq 5, battery preconditioning only works to warm up the battery. Does battery preconditioning also cool down the battery pack on a hot day in a Tesla? I believe it does.
In a Tesla, I believe it might. It doesn't communicate the same way. I know in the Hyundai, they call it winter mode. So it really is just the heating element. It's not the cooling part of it.
Yeah.
But we should mention both of these cars are actively managed liquid cooled thermal battery systems, aka they're not the Nissan Leaf. So I think most people in most of the United States and most weather conditions won't have problems with overly hot batteries. I don't know if you've had different experiences, Dave.
Look, the optimal temperature to charge any of these cars' batteries is probably around 24, 25, 26 degrees Celsius.
Hmm.
Um, and so if it's a super hot day and you're not cooling the battery, you're definitely going to limit your the ability when you pull in to charge. So I actually don't know that answer, but I seem to recall the Model Y and the Model 3s do also cool the battery pack as well. I may be wrong on that, but
Yeah, they're
listen,
cooled with liquid, so they are actively managed battery packs. And I think, aside from extreme conditions, like if you were on a racetrack really stressing the batteries and the motors, I don't think most people are going to overheat either car.
right, right,
One
yeah. I mean,
thing we should
go ahead.
mention though, Dave,
Mhm.
let's say you've got I don't know, a Vitamix or something you want to bring with you on a camping trip. How do you plug that into your car?
Say that again. What do you,
Let's say you got a blender, you've got something. How do
oh,
you plug it into your Hyundai?
well, so it depends on the trim level, but if you've got a Ioniq 5 that's either an SEL or a limited, there is a plug in the back seat that you can plug in that I believe is 1600 watts. Maybe it's 1500. I can't remember exactly. And then you can also buy. I don't believe Ioniq 5 comes with the vehicle to load adapter, but it's about $519, I believe, that you can purchase an adapter that you can plug into the J1772 charging port. And then what you can do is you can take energy out of the battery that so you can if you're at your camping site, you can power anything. And as a matter of fact, there was a video where Kathy made me toast. Right, she made me an English muffin with peanut butter and jelly, and that was just sort of a gimmicky thing that we did. But it's kind of a neat function to be able to do that. What I would argue though is that on the Model Y, not to put this back in you, but for years, Kyle and I, we've had inverters that you plug into a power port, and you can actually plug your car in. But I don't know what the output of that is. The concept though of vehicle to load, and actually Hyundai having the bilateral, you can put energy into the car, you can get energy out of the car. It's very convenient, and it's a little bit more than a party trick. I've actually charged my laptop at times and cell phones. Actually, cell phones I don't need to because I have USB. I believe the Ioniq 5 may not even have USB-C. I can't remember. I think it
It
has
does have
USB-A.
USB-C in the interior.
But you can always get the adapters. But I've charged my laptop in my Ioniq 5 before. It was great. It was really good. Very handy. Do you have that in the Model Y?
So you can charge because it's got USB-C, and I believe they're power delivery ports in Model Y, so you can actually charge a MacBook or a laptop at pretty high wattage, up to 100 watts, I want to say, on Model Y. However, I mentioned your dongle adapter thing because while I agree with you, Dave, on a technical level, it's cool that the vehicle has these bi-directional capabilities. I just think it looks super goofy that you need to buy this adapter and put it on the back exterior of the car to plug things in. It's just, to me, it's a little bit awkward. I wish they'd integrated that in a bit of a smoother way.
Well, you have two ports though. You have that, and you also have the one inside the car. The only thing is that if it's inside the car and the car is off, you don't have the power there. So if you're trying to power something outside the car at a campsite, the car has to be on as well.
Inside
Um,
the car, unlimited, right? That's the highest end trim, I think, that gets the rear.
it is definitely on the limited. I can't remember if it's on the SEL as well.
Another
Um,
thing, Dave, you mentioned when it's on. This is the thing I love about Model Y. You get in, you just go. You get out, the car locks. How does that work on the Ioniq 5?
I give you this one as well. I don't understand why I have to turn a car on, right? After owning Teslas. I can't tell you how many times I got out of the Ioniq 5, or I get out of the GV60 and walk away and the thing beeps at me and I forgot to turn it off. And I got to open the door. I got to reach in, hit the button. At least in the GV60, you got the crystal ball If you see park, drive, or neutral, you know that the car is still, quote, on. If you see the crystal ball, you know the car is off. But it's just stupid to me, and I'll give you that one on the for the Model Y. No reason to turn a car on, no reason to turn a car off. Model Y, you walk away, it does auto locking. For some reason, my Ioniq 5 here in the States, I could never get it to auto lock when I walked away. I always had to hit the button, I think. Pretty sure that's the case. And same with the GV60. They, for whatever reason, don't allow it here. So, excuse me, getting over a sickness. I'm getting better though.
Glad to hear you're getting better. But yeah, that is worth mentioning. The Ioniq 5 is just, I think, this antiquated model of you have to push this button to start and stop the car, and you've got to sometimes manually lock it because the proximity key doesn't work as well as it should.
Yeah.
So that's worth mentioning. Dave, is there anything else that you think is in favor of Ioniq 5 that you want to mention here?
Um, it's just not a Tesla, right? I mean, how many Model Ys are there on the road? To
A
the
lot.
point where
And
you're
more
so
every
like,
day.
it's like, oh, there goes a, I when I was growing up, oh, there goes a Honda Accord, another Honda Accord, another Honda Accord. The Ioniq 5 goes by, it's like, whoa, that is a cool looking car. You look at the styling on the Ioniq 5, the headlights, the light bar, the signature bar, the way with which they have actually retroed this car. This is like it's kind of like the Back to the Future car, retro but futuristic. I mean, they have nailed this in this design. I happen to love the design, and also you can get some pretty cool paint with this car. As a matter of fact, the one that I got was a matte finish paint, which I was a little afraid of at first, but it was really nice. It was not super hard to keep well. Um, but look, I would say, all right, let's stop playing the game. They're both awesome cars.
Yeah.
They really are. I mean, at the end of the day, the Tesla, it's just so hard to argue about. The one thing that you didn't bring up is the ease of the app, the preconditioning, the ability to be able to monitor where your car is if someone else is driving it. There's so many great features about the Model Y. Excuse me. The Ioniq 5, though, if you haven't driven one, I highly encourage you to go drive one. And as we get closer to this whole Magic Dock thing taking off here in the country, the ability for you to be able to charge your CCS car at a Tesla supercharger, I think we're potentially living through a unique time where it's kind of VHS or Betamax, and VHS is Tesla, and they're killing it, and Betamax is just struggling. But I don't know. When I have with the Tesla, just to throw one more point here, you got the best of both worlds, because if you got a newer model Tesla, you have the Charging Combo One adapter now, so you can actually go and plug into any CCS charging station as well, and that gives you the ability to cross shop electricity rates. The one thing about the Ioniq 5, just to throw one little dart back at you, Max, is that you do get manufacturers free 3 years worth of, or 2 years, I can't remember, worth of free supercharge or DC fast charging. Whereas with the Tesla, you're on your own. Now, you and I should do a whole separate video about manufacturer supplied electricity at DC fast chargers, because I'm not a fan of it. I'm not sure where your head is, but those are really my thoughts.
Yeah, well, I agree with all those thoughts, Dave. And I think that's a good place to kind of end it. These are both fantastic vehicles that really mostly defer when it comes to the decisions that have been made around standards like charging, the model with which you buy them, those kinds of aspects of the experience. I think we both agree that the bones of both of these vehicles are really sound. And while they may be different, we can both, I think, respect them for what they are. The Model Y being this aerodynamic, practical beast of a car with a great charging network, the Ioniq 5 being this bleeding edge, retro futuristic, really cool vehicle as well. So I think both great electric crossover options. Hopefully, we've given people good choices to consider. If we have to make a pick here, though, who won? I don't know. My bet right now, with the experience of public charging in this country and because of the software and the app, is just Tesla. And I got to hand it to you, Dave. I love the Ioniq 5. I love a lot about it, but I just think for most people, who might not care about any of the superficial looks, Model Y might be the winner.
I taking off my debate hat. I kind of agree, especially now that the Model Y does qualify for the $7,500 federal tax credit on a purchase, and the Ioniq 5 does not. Um, Keep in mind that if you do buy a used pre-owned Ioniq 5, you will not get the free DC fast charging. But I think that Model Y right now, it's an amazing car. It really is. But if you're not having to rely on the Tesla supercharger, I really encourage you to drive the Ioniq 5. There's some intangibles. Years ago, before you were born, Max, I'm sure, Volkswagen had this ad campaign called Farfignugan. For those of you with gray hair like me, you'll probably remember this. And everyone was like, "What does that mean, Farfignugan?" And they've actually turned that in. Some of the fanboys of Volkswagen turned that into something kind of funny and bad, and it's kind of like one of the funny stickers you see. But it was what they were trying to describe was an intangible sort of feeling that you get. There is a social element to the Ioniq 5, that it has a unique cultural sort of identity that is really, really cool, and it's not clinical. It's got a lot of warmth to it, and I think that it has a personality. Whereas I think of the Model Y as a rock solid dentist chair that is going to be there for a long time. It's very medical, very clinical, very simplistic. And I think some of the gimmicky things in the Ioniq 5, including the Lazy Boy recliner in the Limited, or the fact that you can slide the center console back and forth, don't worry about those things. But look, they're both great cars. Cross shop them. But right now, economically, if you're going to be looking at an Ioniq 5 versus a Model Y, it's going to be really tough to justify at these current levels Ioniq 5, as the purchase. So I I think I won the debate without a question. Okay, Max, you know what I'm saying? But so let's not even go there. But I would say that right now, in these current market conditions, with the economy the way it is, and with the economic incentives that are in place right now, if it were my money, I'd probably buy a Model Y over the Ioniq 5.
Dave, great rhetoric as always, and I will hand this to you. You debated valiantly, and I do agree with you. The emotional part of me, like taking off my debate hat, not representing Tesla, I would get the Ioniq 5 because I like quirky cars. I like cars that make a statement, and the Ioniq 5 does really, to me, it speaks to me, and I like the message that it would project on the road. That just me speaking superficially and emotionally. And yes, the Model Y is that kind of rock solid dentist chair option. I think that's a great analogy. It's there. It's an option. They're both safe picks, but really it just comes down to, yeah, the economic conditions favor Model Y. However, I do want to give the caveat that rear wheel drive only Ioniq 5, if you get them for what the sticker price should be, would be cheaper. So for folks who really are stretching their budget, maybe a rear wheel drive Ioniq 5 is all they can afford. Getting to a Tesla Model Y dual motor, right, you're looking closer to $50,000. Maybe some folks can't stretch the budget. But if you can, and you don't care about any of the Ioniq 5's superficial, I think, or aesthetic statements, then the Tesla's a great option. So
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a great place to close it. But thank you so much for joining me today, Dave.
Absolutely. Listen, we got to do more of these. I like this, and I like winning. Winning is so much fun, Max.
Okay, well, I'll send your medal in the mail, Dave. But thank you
Thank
for
you.
joining
Thank
me, and
you.
I definitely agree. We've got to do more of these, and we'll also we have to discuss topics like free complimentary charging being offered with a lot of EVs now, because I do have thoughts on that as well.
Absolutely. Let's do it. I'll talk to you soon, my friend. You have a good
Yep.
night.
Thanks to you too, Dave.
Take care now.